Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, this is Kim Howerton, and you're listening to Keto Life Support. On today's episode, number 156, we are going to discuss the 4 Horsemen of the Dietpocalypse. Let's get into it. So the 4 Horsemen of the Dietpocalypse. What do I mean? What's going on here? Well, there seems to be 4 things that really are just screaming doom for any attempt at weight loss. And these tend to happen with long-term approaches more than anything else. This is in part why I periodize weight loss, right? I do periods of maintenance and then periods of weight loss, which can have its own problems. I mean, nothing is perfect, but it does help with this specific problem, which is the 4 Horsemen of the Dietpocalypse. They are the drift, the flail and bounce, the double down paralysis, and the destroyer of worlds, the F it. And when I say F, there are 3 letters that go after it, but I'm trying to be family friendly. All right, so let's talk about when do these things happen? Why do they doom us to failure? What do we do? So the drift, you might be familiar with the drift. The drift is just a very slow shift away from what works. Some people call this creep, like as in carb creep or calorie creep. Pick your word. I kind of call it a drift because it's this just subtle, like it's like, you know, you're in your boat and your boat is going in a direction. Then the waves kind of come in and your boat starts to just drift slightly off course, but you're still, you know, generally going in the right direction, except when you follow that trajectory of the drift too far, you're like, well, how did I end up here? Really far from where you thought you were going to end up. And the drift is that way. It's so subtle, you don't even notice it's happening sometimes unless you have your attention on it. It could go in a variety of different little topics, right? And it could be all of them all at once. Maybe, you know, when you first started your diet, I'm just saying diet, like, you know, or a time when you were trying to lose weight and you had a plan in mind. You had a strategy and you had a plan. And your plan was, you know, I'm going to eat 2 meals a day. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I'm just giving you an example. 2 meals a day and no snacking and this many grams of carbs. And, you know, you got your delineations of how it's going to go. And just slowly you added a snack in the afternoon. And then a little nibble after dinner. And then lunch was a little less organized. And it kind of became a couple of hours of picking at things. And then, you know, it's just like little things. Or so it could be like a timing thing, or it could be you're really strict about your ingredients, but then you're like, you know, a little popcorn, not the worst thing, or a little this, or I'm going to have a bite of my kids' dinner while I'm cleaning up their leftovers, right? It's just the little things. You stop measuring the oil you pour in your pan. You know, you put mayonnaise on your food without measuring it, right? It's like that. There's any one time of doing it, nothing bad would happen to you. Not a single bad thing, unless, you know, barring anything you're allergic to. But, you know, if you did it once, you're totally going to get away with it. Twice, you probably, but eventually it's just like so many of them pile up that bad things start to happen, or at least good things stop happening, right? So the drift. Let's talk about the flail and bounce. What is a flail and bounce? I always get an image in my mind of, I forget the term for it, you know, but in like Legally Blonde, like the pop and bounce or whatever, when they do that little move. Anyway, flail and bounce. The flail and bounce is where you just keep changing your mind, flailing, right? Just like you're drowning. Apparently, I've got like a lot of water analogies here. So you're in the water and you're drowning, you're flailing around and your head keeps going under. But the flail and bounce is, let's say you're like, I got to get this weight off. I'm going to go carnivore. Carnivore is it. I know carnivore is the approach I need. You start carnivore and then like you keep reading and thinking and planning. And 3 days into carnivore, you're like, high fat carnivore. No, it's got to be high fat carnivore. And then you do like 2 or 3 days of high fat carnivore. And then you read something else and you're like, no, low fat carnivore. And you switch. And then 3 days later, and then another week later, you get convinced that the importance of fiber was really undervalued and you really need. So now you're like, no, high fiber keto. And it's like, change. You never stick with anything long enough to see any real success. It's just constant jumping. You're never really landing. You're never really settling in. You're never really giving things time to work. That is the flail and the bounce. Then we've got the double down paralysis. Now, I'm not sure if paralysis is quite the right word, but that's what we're calling it. So this is where you double down on things. What does double down mean? You just like, hey, that thing that I was doing, it wasn't really working. So I must just not have been doing it hard enough. So I'm going to do it harder. So I'm doubling down on what I was doing. Problem was that maybe the thing that you were doing that wasn't working because the thing wasn't the right thing for you. So you're just going to do it harder, but it wasn't the right thing in the first place. And you didn't stop and reevaluate if that thing was useful for you or not. Right? So let's say, now I'm not saying fasting is a bad tool. No tool in and of itself is a bad tool, but how you use it is very important, right? So let's say you said, I know that my blood sugars get better when I'm fasting. I know that I lose a few pounds when I fast. I think fasting is a good thing for me. I'm going to fast. And so you do a 2-day fast, and then every week you're doing a 2-day fast, and you go a couple of weeks and you're like, well, yeah, I lose a couple pounds every time I fast, but by the end of the week, I'm back up to where I was, and it's been like a month, and I haven't seen any weight loss, and that's weird because I should be seeing weight loss when I'm fasting. But all the time that I'm not fasting, I feel a little nuts, and like I feel a little obsessed with food, and so I don't feel that mentally stable. And so, you know what? I must need to do like a 3-day fast, and I got to do it better. I mean, I really have to maybe I have to cut out coffee or whatever, and then you like take a stop, and like if I were able to just review the video footage of this person's week, I would say, oh, you're reacting to the fasting by binging after the fast. So you're having this reactive binge after you fast, and I'm noticing that your behaviors seem very food obsessed, and I'm wondering if maybe fasting is right for you, because it seems like the binging is being caused by the fasting. Now, that may or may not be true and could use some investigation, but if you don't stop and ask the question, is the behavior I'm trying to do better the right behavior for me in the first place, then doubling down on it is not going to fix it. It's going to make it worse. So if something doesn't appear to be working, you have to figure out why it didn't work, not just do it harder. And so the double down paralysis is where you get so stuck in your blinders that you're the problem, right? Oh, I'm just not doing it good enough. I'm just not doing it hard enough. I'm just not doing it fast enough. I'm not enough, right? That causes paralysis. That causes this locked in. You're paralyzed in this position where you just keep doing the cycle of the thing that is not good for you, not working for you, not getting you towards your goals. So that double down is not the right thing in all cases. Now, are there cases where you're like, hey, I got to tighten up? Well, yeah, let's say you're doing the drift. If you're engaging in the drift, yeah, you got to tighten up. You got to be like, hey, I got to stop drifting. I got to get this boat back on course. What was the plan I had? What was the good plan I had? Am I still following the plan? if I'm on a journey, I'm on the right road. That's when you need to double down on the things that work. But they got to be the things that work. And they got to be the things that work for you, right? In this scenario. And then you got to give them time to work. And then the last one of these things, the destroyer of worlds, the effort. What is that? That is an emotionally reactive space where you throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You throw it all away. Let's say you've been attempting to lose weight for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, some period of time that is a fairly long period of time for you where you've seen no progress, at least in your mind, either no progress or insufficient progress. You are frustrated. You feel broken. You are starting to internalize this. You are feeling hopeless, right? All of those things start to happen. You start to crumble and you think, F it. Why am I trying so hard if this isn't going to work? I might as well not try. I might as well be eating the things that I like or that make me feel comfort or fill in the blank, right? I might as well be giving into my addictions because not doing it is not getting me the results I want. And almost invariably, this leads to a period of weight gain, right? So you're like, it's like one of your tires goes flat. That's not good enough. I got to puncture them all. Instead of stopping, taking a breath, taking a break, fixing the tire that went flat and going on about your trip, you're like, no, I'm going to flatten all my tires. I'm going to push this car off cliff and light it on fire. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That is the destroyer of worlds. That is heartbreakingly common behavior. So I understand where it's coming from. I identify with it. I have those tendencies too. You can't let it happen though. So what are the alternatives? I've already given you a few hints along the way because I can't help myself. But what do we do if we're drifting? If we're drifting, we got to get back on course. So if you notice yourself drifting off course, little things are creeping in, foods you don't normally eat in an unplanned fashion. Now, if you want to decide, if you want to say, hey, I want to change my approach in a conscious, connected, present, attentive manner, fabulous. I support you. That is different than the drift. The drift is, I am not following the plan. I'm not on the path. I'm letting other things slip in. I am drifting off the path. Tighten it up. Get back on the road. Get back on your route and tighten that up. The flail and bounce. How do you fix that? You got to give things time to work. You got to commit. You got to commit and you got to do it. Now, when do you cut bait, right? When do you no, not going to do it? Cut bait immediately if you're miserable. And I don't mean like miserable about not seeing outcomes. That I don't mean. But if it's making you sick, it's making you feel unwell, if you're having physical issues with the way that you're eating or the path you've chosen, cut that immediately. Change it. But if it's more just, I'm not seeing immediate results, I'm not seeing everything I ever wanted this to be, this is harder than I thought, right? Like little things where you're like, ask yourself, but can I do it? Well, give it 30 days for goodness sake. You got to give it 30 days. Then you got to make a conscious decision. How do I feel about what happened? What went wrong? What wasn't what I wanted it to be? Then you make a new decision. All right, for the next at least 30 days, I'm going to do this other thing, or I'm going to change this one little detail. But you got to give it a chance. You can't just jump ship. Double down paralysis. If something isn't working and you're like, this isn't working, don't do it harder. Evaluate why it isn't working and make a new plan that you think will work better. If you're stuck there, talk to someone who knows about the subject, whether that's a coach or somebody else in your community that does a similar way of eating, or just somebody who is intelligent and good at thinking things through. Hey, I'm not saying you are not intelligent. No way, no how. I'm saying it takes a fresh pair of eyes sometimes. You would be that person for somebody else likely, right? Somebody might come to you and say, the thing I'm doing isn't quite working. You could look at it and be like, well, this is very obvious. I see what you're doing that isn't working. But when it's ourselves, sometimes that's hard. We get stuck. And so if you need help here, get help. And then the last one, the F it. That's a big one, right? Don't let your world get destroyed. So you got to stop yourself here. You got to be reasonable with yourself here. You've got to take notice when you're this frustrated. You got to take notice when you're at the end of your rope, and you got to take a break. You got to take a break. So it's always totally appropriate to go to maintenance. Say it with me, people. Maintenance. Not binge land. Not throw it all off the cliff land. Not sabotage land. Because when things aren't going the way we want them to go, sometimes we like to sabotage it so we stop feeling confused. If you are saying to yourself, I don't understand why this isn't working, I think that I'm doing everything I can do, or I think I'm doing something that should get a result, and I'm not getting a result, makes us feel crazy. It is cognitively easier to light something on fire and then know that you lit it on fire, right? It's easier to self-sabotage, and then that part of you that is sort of heartbroken over not knowing what went wrong. Well, now you know what went wrong. You did it on purpose. You're back in a little bit of control. Whereas when you don't know why it's not happening, it's very out of control feeling, and nobody likes that. So a lot of us self-sabotage to regain control. I know it sounds weird, but it's totally true. So another method with less destruction to regain control is to say, I'm going to be in maintenance for a little while. I'm not going to try and lose weight this month. I'm going to eat in a way that I'm eating healthily, meeting my needs, and not trying to lose weight, which means maybe you reevaluate your macros, you look at what you're eating, you kind of get back to basics, but you do so without the intention of losing weight, which means maybe you're getting to eat a little more or a little more intentionally, right? And when you do that, it helps you feel like you're regaining some control again. So I would say that what we really want to focus on there is taking a sane, intentional break, because we all need that now and again, just a little bit of relief from the pressure before we break. So take the break before you break is what I would say, right? And so if it's time for that, make sure you schedule that in. That's what I do with my life. I schedule in breaks. Because trying to do this major weight loss thing in one fell swoop, all like just as fast as possible, like I get it. I remember back when I weighed 100 plus pounds more, how many times I calculated how fast could I get this off, how much time I wasted on really ill-planned weight loss efforts because they seemed like they were going to happen faster rather than something that was going to be slower but more effective. And I get that feeling. It's like you're suffocating. That feeling like all your extra body weight is pressing on your chest and you can't breathe. And I mean that like on an emotional way, but it feels physical. And it can be physical. There can be a physical feeling of that as well. But this feeling like you're never going to be able to take a breath and feel good and stop being anxious and all of those things until it's done. But you got to live your life and you got to enjoy your days. And I don't mean YOLO, have the Twinkie. That's you only live once. No, I don't mean that. But you are a person that deserves love, respect, happiness, all of those things today. We're not putting those things off until you hit some goal weight. which means you deserve to take a break anytime you need one. There is no gold medal for the speed of weight loss. In fact, slower weight loss tends to yield longer results. So this is my vote for you guys. When things go off the rails in any of these 4 ways, which I seem to think they invariably do, employ the right fix, which may include taking a break and giving yourself a little bit of time in intentional maintenance. All right. Enjoy this week, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.